What's up, everyone? I'm Rabbi Jonathan Perlman.
I'm Beth Kissileff Perlman.
Do a warm Chag Sameach for the upcoming Shavuot holiday that begins tomorrow night, and we're very pleased to be involved in tonight's Tikkun. I want to begin with a story that Mel Brooks tells as he portrays the 2,000-year-old man. Actually, this is the 2013-year-old man, and he's asked a question about celebrities, and he says, he starts talking about Jewish celebrities, and he says, the one thing about Jewish celebrities is they always give their parents the awards that they get. And so Carl Reiner asks him, really all the Jewish celebrities, all of them, what about Moses? Oh, yes, of course. All the Jewish celebrities, they get these awards, and they take them out and they show them to their neighbors and their guests when they come over to visit, and they go, ooh, ah, and throughout history, the Jewish celebrities have been doing this. Moses gave his parents the commandments, and they put them on the mantles so everybody could see them. And the TV repairman comes over, and they go, oh, ah, they're very proud of them. And they display them right over the fireplace where everybody can see them. So tonight we're going to be talking about those tablets, the stone tablets, and what they mean. And I'm going to turn this over to Beth to introduce the topic and to share our source sheet.
Okay, so right now, what do I? Now it says basic. What do I?
And Joseph has to unshare his screen in order for you to share yours.
All right, I said yes. I want to let him do that, but. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, so so tonight we just wanted to spend a few minutes reflecting on what the meaning of, these, as John said, this award that you put up on the top of the mantle so the TV repairman and everybody else can see it. Why do you have something up there? What is it symbolizing? Why do you need those stones? Because it's not the stones themselves, they're not very attractive or interesting or engaging. It's what they represent. It's what they're symbolic of. It's where they point to. So we wanted to spend some time thinking about, what the luchot are and how they point to some larger themes of the holiday. Because this is the holiday when the Torah is given, and we're going to be reading on Monday in synagogue about the revelation, about the giving of the 10 Commandments. But really the question is, what does that point to? It's not just those actual 10 Commandments, but it's the larger issue of what Torah is and what revelation is and what it points at. So I'm going to start with two verses, one Exodus 31:18. Vayitain el Moshe kachaloto ledaber ito b'har Sinai shnei luchot ha'edu luchot even keduvim be'etzba Elohim. When he finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God. So this is the first time these are called luchot ha'edut, the tablets of the pact or the tablets of the testimony, and we're told they're inscribed with the finger of God. And the second time we see this concept of how they're inscribed is in Exodus 32:16, and it says, "V'haluchot ma'aseh Elohim hema," they are the doing of God. "V'hamichtav michtav Elohim hu," and the writing is the writing of God. "Charut al haluchot," it was engraved or incised upon the tablets. So I just wanted to ask you, when you see this sense of stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God, or things upon which God's writing is engraved, what that means to you, what sense you have of that. So if people want to unmute themselves and answer, that would be great, so that we can see. I'm trying to resize this so I can see everyone. All right, shall I stop share so that I can? Okay, yeah, so if anybody wants to respond, okay, Barbara.
Yeah, so by saying that they're inscribed in stone, they're not going to be easily erased. There's an eternality to the to what's written.
Another question you might think about is, when you see these the tablets portrayed, whether it's in synagogue or in art, what does it make you think of immediately? Like, what does it represent? One of the questions we have is, what does it mean to you as a symbol? I'll throw out some different ideas. We could say they represent the Torah as a whole, right? They you might say,
Right, that if there's 603,550 letters in the Torah, so you can't have all of those 600,000 and 600,000, 3,550 letters in the, you can't have all of them, but you can have something that'll remind you of the totality. So maybe there, a few letters that remind you of the totality.
Okay.
Oh, I see Dave has a hand up.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna say it seems like Cliff's Notes almost, it's like you don't have time to reread, to think about the whole Torah, just like focus on these things. Another kind of thing I was thinking about when it talked about the finger of God is that seems like very personal, more personal than like when I write. I'll if I'm writing on a piece of paper, I'll usually use a pen. There's like something in between my hand and the text, but the finger is like, it's the most direct way to inscribe something. So, so that
right.
Yeah, makes it seem more personally coming from God.
Right. You might even say that the tablets themselves are a letter that God writes to the Jewish people, and you would be correct in saying that if you looked at written papyri or stones from that period, lots and lots of kings writing vassals letters and telling them what to do. So it fits right into the culture of its time. In fact, if we still had them around somewhere, if they were, on Moses' parents' mantelpiece somewhere or in a museum, we might have them next to all the other stones and papyri that were written at that time as letters of kings to their vassals, reminding them of the most important of their laws. And a lot of people do think that these tablets are the most important of the laws. They represent, the best of human behavior, maybe, or the if we were to have the essential top 10, they would be inscribed on these stones, and we would, hang them on the walls of our homes, and we would, put them on the doorposts of our house, which of course we don't put the Shema on our houses. Any other ideas about what they could represent?
But no, I mean, that also, when John talks about ancient Near Eastern letters, they're also a covenant, part of what the relationship is between two people with unequal power. God and the Jewish people is a covenant. So they're part of this legal arrangement that, there's sort of this agreement of observing certain things between the two parties.
And so they're appropriately called Luchot HaEdut, the tablets of the covenant,
Or
and
testimony,
or testimony.
or pact.
Right.
So,
What has been witnessed? What do we testify? What do they testify to? Because we know as Jews that the Torah is a much larger document than just these 2 stone tablets. Is it a receipt of some kind? Like, Moses spent 40 days and 40 nights up on the mountaintop, and God said, okay, now that you have it all in your mind, you're going to be able to teach this orally to the people. And by the way, here's a receipt, just to let them know that I was behind it. You can tell them it was written by the finger of God.
they really know that where you were. You weren't off in Honolulu. You were up on Mount Sinai with God. Here's the receipt.
Right.
So.
Okay, so
Do you wanna?
I guess one other thought that comes to mind from what you're saying there is it's potentially like more visible than like the Torah. We usually keep it in the ark, and then we take it out of the ark, we read it, and then we put it like back in the ark. I guess the tablets, I guess I'm not sure where it was intended to be displayed at that time, but nowadays people often put like a picture of the 10 Commandments somewhere in the synagogue, so you can kind of see them like more often, I guess.
I think that most aronot, most arks in synagogues usually have the 10 Commandments displayed above. Sometimes it's between 2 lions, or sometimes it's by itself, and sometimes within the architecture it's a pretty consistent display that the commandments are there to give us some focus. And maybe the focus is on Revelation, to remind us of the event of Revelation, and of course the ark has in its contents the Sefer, or the Sifrei Torah. So I guess we want to make another suggestion, in addition to all the suggestions that you gave, and say that I want to use the thought of Rav Shimon Schwab, who is a 20th century rabbi from the Brewer community in the Washington Heights area of New York, who has written a wonderful perush to the Torah, and asks all these questions about what these luchot, what these tablets represent. And he says that following a lot of the commentaries that say that the 10 sayings, as they're usually called, the Aseret Dibrot, the 10 sayings, are actually topical headings for all the 613 as they are in the Torah. And there are numerous commentaries. In fact, I have one book that shows that this is sort of an outline form, and all we're seeing is the topic headings in these 10 sayings that are inscribed on the luchot, on the stone tablets. And then he makes this metaphorical suggestion that the sayings actually mean more than they appear. In fact, they are kind of like the most simplified meaning of just 10 sayings that are printed there, and that there are greater and more loftier interpretations that are attached to it. So for instance, let's take the example of thou shalt not murder, lo tirtzah. In this, this idea contains the idea that is found in the Talmud, that a person who whitens the face of his fellow in public is as if he committed murder. What is the Talmud speaking about here?
So you can see I have on the screen here above them, it's CF 58B.
So if you humiliate a person, or if you scare a person, the person is sometimes the blood from that person's face is completely drained. And because you change the circulatory system of the person who is being shamed or is being frightened for some reason, you have effectively caused his murder without even touching him. It's like you've created you've created a hole in the body that drains the blood from that person's face. So that is a loftier idea of the commandment, thou shalt not murder. Or we find in Midrash Rabbah, which is also on the sheet, I think, no, we did, okay, we did, that if, I can't see.
All right. One who causes a person to sin is worse than if he had killed him. From a certain perspective, the one who causes his fellow to sin is called a murderer, even if he has not touched his body at all.
Okay. So, for instance, so this is an even loftier concept. Hasn't even have to do with blood or anything like that. It has to do with causing another person to sin. Now, you might think that this is not really the case of murder. But if you, put a stumbling block before a person, or if you force them to do something in a coercive way that makes them sin, then it's as though you have killed that person, that you've taken away his free will, and that is a kind of murder according to the oral tradition.
No one can take away someone else's free will. The person has chosen to sin, but you've aided them in sinning. I mean,
so in any case, these are two examples of how the commandment "Thou shalt not murder" is used. I want to give you another example from another book. The idea of coveting. So what is coveting about? Coveting is
explain what the book is.
Coveting is about being selfish. The 10th commandment is all about selfishness, and it sums it up in a negative way by saying, "Thou shalt not covet." When you don't covet, you are actually asserting that what you have in life is enough. It's a very hard commandment to follow, to say, what I have is enough. Sameach bechalko, as they say in Pirkei Avot, I am happy with my portion. But being covetous hurts us more than it harms our neighbors, for it makes our soul turn to evil rather than to good. It is the Torah's aim to uproot every bit of selfishness from our hearts. And I read from a mashal, a sort of a story from the Maggid of Dubno. A father once said to his son, "My son, I will give you an inn fully stocked with delicious food and with drinks that gladden the heart. The inn will afford you a good living, but remember always that food and drink are not for you, but only for your customers. Use the food to satisfy the hunger and thirst of the rich and the frivolous, but be abstemious yourself if you wish to prosper." And so it is, says the Maggid, that the blessings of this world, the Creator put wealth upon the earth, but it was not intention that the people of Israel should revel in luxury. God is good to every living thing and therefore seeks to provide for all of mankind. Israel, as his chosen people, is charged with the duty of helping to provide for those in need. And the unbridled enjoyments of this world were not for the faithful believer, but only for those who have not yet attained the spiritual plane at which a human mind can understand such things. The Torah tells us, "And you shall be to me my own treasure among all peoples, for all the earth is mine." From Exodus 19:5. So here is another example of the 10th commandment of do not covet being taken to a loftier level. It turns into the idea of tzedakah, that we should shun this idea of wealth. We should shun the idea that we need all these things to make us happy in this world. And instead, we should be there to share whatever we have with other people and to make other people happy, like, this innkeeper with food and drink. And it's also a suggestion of hospitality. So covetousness, not coveting, also becomes a suggestion of the loftier view of hospitality. So how does this fit into the idea of the luchot? You have on luchot these different sort of simplified meanings of loftier ideas. And in Rav Schwab's view, the angels, this is from a midrash, the angels are arguing with God about the fact that these 10 sayings that are inscribed upon the luchot do not belong in the hands of mortals. And God says to them, and then Moses says to God and defends the Jewish people and says, of course, the Jewish people are going to find all kinds of ways to interpret these commandments. And you angels, you've never experienced, being taken out of Egypt. And you've never experienced what it means to be engaged in business practices and trying to find out about, ways of being ethical in business.
You don't have fathers and mothers.
Right, you don't have fathers and mothers. So, of course, these belong to the people below. Now, Rav Schwab asked, where would the angels even get this idea that the luchot somehow don't belong to the people. And he says that because the commandments are on such a loftier level and can be understood in heaven as something very abstract, the people wouldn't be able to understand or comprehend them at all. And, he says that the greatest minds of humanity can't begin to understand the mathematical and geometric and universal ideas that are contained within these commandments. Because after all, these commandments and this Torah are a blueprint for all of life. It's much more than just morality. It's much more than just stating all of the laws about holidays and Shabbat and so on. But these are a code. These are a code for understanding God and the universe, and they don't belong in the hands of people. So Moses wins the argument. God agrees, and God decides that at the end of this argument, according to the Midrash, this is when he decides to give him the tablets. The whole argument was about the whole Torah and how what an abstraction it is. But he says, let's start with these simple 10 sayings and start there so that even an uneducated person can become a Torah learner, a person engaged in the study of Torah. Torah is meant to be able to refine a person's personality. Torah, we're told, is told using the word lo nitnu hamitzvot ela litzaref behem et habriut. This is found in Genesis Rabbah 44. The laws have been given for the purpose of refining people through them. And the word refining is the word for, or purifying is the word that we use for, putting something in the oven or in a hot metals. Yeah, we purify metals by using fire to make it refined. So, from the, if you can remember that when we first started talking about Revelation, we were talking about a smoking mountain, a mountain on fire, and the people weren't allowed even to go near it at all. And only Moses was the one who could be sent up to handle the revelation of God opening the heavens and being able to appear and give himself to the people, and that was a lot of fire and smoke, and there was a sound and light show, and we carry that in our hearts every time we learn Torah together. So I'm going to turn this over to Beth, and we're going to study the other source on the sheet, which is from the conclusion of Rav Schwab's essay.
Okay, so as John was saying, okay, so as John was saying, and as these other examples are discussing, the idea is that it's not just, these simple words, lo tirtzach or lo tachmod, don't murder, don't covet. It's not what they say, but it's what they point to as well. That murder isn't just the act of murder itself, but it might be embarrassing someone, so that the blood goes to their face, or it might be the other example, leading someone to sin. What Rav Schwab is saying that we're teaching is that somehow these commandments concentrate the ideas. They refine them, they concentrate the ideas in some way, but it's not just that one idea, but it's that when it says don't murder, it's a concentration and a refinement of something larger. This is a symbol, but it's not just those words, it's something larger itself. So the question is, how does that concentration come about? How does that refining process come about? So as John said, usually we think of the revelation as this very fiery, powerful sound and light show, but there's an alternative way to see it that's represented in Psalm 147, which we have up on the screen, and I'm going to read it and we'll discuss it. Hallelujah, ki tov zamra Eloheinu ki na'im navatila. Hallelujah, it's good to chant hymns to our God. It's present to sing glorious praise. The Lord rebuilds Jerusalem. He gathers in the exiles of Israel. He heals their broken hearts. He binds up their wounds. He reckoned the number of stars. So but the part that we wanted, John, was lower down, right? Okay. But this just gives you an idea of the beginning of this prayer of what God's power is. This is a very beautiful verse, binding up the broken heart. But, okay. So the part that we wanted to discuss was here. Okay. Do you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm just going to read the English just because I want to be able to provide some time for questions. I see where he sends forth his word to the earth. These are the last 5 verses of the Psalm. He sends forth his word to the earth. His command runs swiftly. He lays down snow like fleece, scatters frost like ashes. He tosses down hail like crumbs. Who can endure his icy cold? He issues a command. It melts them. He breathes, and the waters flow. He issued his commands to Jacob, his statutes and rules to Israel. He did not do so for any other nation. Of such rules they know nothing. Hallelujah.
So what we're interested in are these verses. He lays down snow like fleece, scatters frost like ashes. He tosses down hail like crumbs. Who can endure his icy cold? So when Rav Schwab discusses these verses, why don't you can explain about Rav Schwab's.
The idea here is that in contrast to the fiery mountain that we were discussing before, this is a different view of Revelation. I've often read this psalm to myself many times. We read it in prayer on Shabbos, and I always thought to myself, what is this psalm talking about? What does snow have to do with words?
But if you look, he sends forth his word to the earth, he lays down snow. So word and snow are in parallel. The idea is that the word is somehow like snow.
What is snow, and he talks about scattering frost. And I've always skipped over it. But when I read Rabbi Schwab on this verse, he says that think of Revelation in the way that we just described the way this argument was going on in the heavens with the angels and Moshe. That in that place, it wasn't a place of fire. It was a place of ice. It was a place of frost.
Right. The heavens are cold. If you look at when you're on a plane, if you look at what the temperature is outside, it'll say it's very, very cold.
Right. I mean, I've often, taken an international flight to Israel, for instance, and you look and you'll see a map and it says 200 degrees below zero. And I'm so thankful that I'm in the cozy space of the plane. And so, because I would die if I were outside and exposed to that kind of cold. So that's the kind of danger Revelation represents in the stratosphere. We go miles and miles, 100 miles up into the sky, into the heavens. We would never endure it. And that's exactly what 147 says. It says, he tosses down hail like crumbs, because who could endure his icy cold, right? So what happens is that we human beings benefit from a world in which snow falls like flakes from the sky, and they come down onto the ground and rest like fleece. They scatter like ashes. It's such a beautiful, beautiful view. Anybody who likes snow in the wintertime, I know not all of us like snow in the wintertime, but some of us do. Not all Christians love a white Christmas, White Christmas was written by a Jew, Irving Berlin, after all. So those who appreciate the beauty of snow can appreciate this metaphor that's being used in 147 to substitute for the usual metaphor that Revelation is something that is hot, something that is fiery, something that is written with the finger of God. If you can remember the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, the lightning comes from the sky and it writes down, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. Observe Shabbos. Bzzz. But this is a whole different reality. This is an idea like it's being spread like breadcrumbs all over the place, and it's everywhere. And then what happens in the psalm? It says he issues a command and it melts them. It melts the flakes. It melts the breadcrumbs, and the waters flow when he breathes. So it's not only that the ice in the stratosphere has come down like snow and like hail. It's also that when God wants to, he can melt all of that ice and snow and hail upon the earth, and they all turn into rivers and ponds and lakes. And now we're getting closer to something that we can actually drink, right? There is the beautiful idea expressed by Isaiah, where he says, "Ho, all who are thirsty, come for water. Even if you have no money, come buy food and eat. Buy food without money, wine and milk without cost." This is from Isaiah chapter 55, verse 1. I don't think we put it on the sheet, did we? So this beautiful imagery of Isaiah goes into the rabbinic mind, and we say that all who want to learn are people who are thirsty for its message. I think there's a place on Fifth Avenue in Oakland called the Thirsty Scholar. It's not a new idea. It originates with Isaiah. He equates thirst and the quenching of thirst with the study of Torah. Water becomes the symbol of the study of Torah. There used to be a very old custom that when a boy, or even possibly a girl, was, I think it was like at 10 years old, they would be brought down by the father to a creek or the river, and the father would explain that Torah is like the water. It's always flowing. It's always there to quench your thirst. Dive right in and be able to enjoy it. So let's come back to our, you want to conclude by saying why this alternate view of Revelation connects to the Luchot Habrit, the covenant.
What do you want?
No, I was asking, I wanted you to give an opportunity to speak. Do you want to tie it up? Or do you want me to do it and then we can ask what?
Well, I think just the idea that there's something, God is kind of breaking up the words into small pieces and letting it come down in small pieces, that the snow is sort of small pieces, that it's not something you have to get all at once at the revelation, but also getting in small pieces. And that's sort of what the Luchot represent, that they're just, the small pieces of the commandments are like the snow, that even though all we have are the small pieces, really they represent something larger, but we can absorb it much better in small pieces, that then become something larger. But I think it's an interesting way to think about Revelation. And also, we know for human beings, you can't absorb something large all at once, that if you want to change a habit or you want to do something, you have to start with something very, very small, and then you can make larger changes. I heard an interesting story from Rabbi Yalkut about a very wealthy man was studying with his predecessor, Rabbi Miller, and they'd been studying for many years, for 10 years. And the man said to Rabbi Miller, and this is, and obviously this is a very wealthy man, so, the rabbi could have said anything to him and he would have been able to do it because, he had the capacity to, I really, we've been studying and this is wonderful, but I really want to make a change. What do you think I should do? I want to be more observant. How can I do this? What kind of change can I make? And Rabbi Miller said to him, start using an electric razor. So it's a very interesting response, right? Because if you use an electric razor, the appearance is going to look the same, right? You're still going to be clean shaven. You're going to look the same as you did before, but you're going to know that you didn't. There's a command in Deuteronomy. You're not supposed to make markings on your skin. So many people interpret that you shouldn't use a manual razor, that you should use an electric razor because it's not going to leave markings on your skin. So the idea behind this story is that it's a change that he's making, but no one else is going to know that he's made that change. It's such a small, imperceptible change that only he will know. Now, I don't know, whether it led to other changes as well, but I think, that story is really, representative of the idea of Revelation, that it's not just the large things, but it's with the small things. So this idea of, the Luchot as being this snow that comes down, the words that comes down sort of delicately and gently, points to another view, sort of the view of the smaller change rather than the large revelation.
It says 11:44 on our clock, so I don't know whether this is the end, but
I think up to 11:50.
Oh, we do. So I want to have some questions. I also want to let you know that, in English, of course, the word tablet can also mean something that you swallow. I don't think that you can swallow a luach. A luach is more like a slate or a board in Hebrew, but we call them tablets. And you can also swallow a tablet, or you can, take the tablets and you can put them into water and plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. So I think that there's something about, being able to, drink the water as Isaiah says, and that this is somehow related to the Luach. I often think about the fact that the Jews were punished after the golden calf by eating the broken up
Gold dust
of the calf, that they took the calf and ground it into dust, and that they had to put it into the creek and then drink the dust. So this is the opposite. The reward for accepting the Torah is to perceive the Luchot as a symbol for something beyond, as something that you have to constantly be thinking about. How can I bring this into myself? How can I bring this into my mind and heart? How can I make this part of myself? So it is a symbol that points beyond itself. Questions or comments? You agree, disagree?
We have about 5 minutes, everyone.
Oh, okay, Dave, yeah.
I think it's a wonderful teaching. When you started out, you began with what do we think about the tablets? What do we think of when we see them, when we think of them? And I had thought that they are representative to me, not of all of the words of Torah, as you suggested, Beth, but certainly of the 613 mitzvot. So this notion that the words, we have to really understand the words themselves, and not just the surface way, but in a much deeper way. That was very interesting. And then as I thought about Psalm 147 and what you were teaching, you talked about the snow falling delicately, but of course hail does not fall delicately. Hail can be pretty painful, and as can the mitzvot, right? If we ignore them, if we don't pay attention to them, they can be dangerous to us too. And so I liked the balance of the delicacy of the snow, and conversely, the harshness of the hail.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, thank you, Marshall. Dave?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, so at the end of Shabbat, I was reading this book. It's called How Learning Works. I got it, since I teach. I was given it as a gift. And one of the first chapter, it talks about how do you deal with when your students have misconceptions, and you have to overcome these misconceptions to teach something that contradicts what they think. And there's this idea that they teach called bridging, where you start with something that's in the direction of what you want to teach them, but sounds familiar and maybe is agreeable. And then you take that and go one step further and one step further. And then eventually you say the thing you really wanted to say. If you started with that, they would have just said, that doesn't make sense, and rejected it. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of like what you were describing reminds me of that, of start with these little pieces, 10 commandments, and then we can go deeper from there. And eventually you get to where you want to go, but you have to start with some initial thing.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. God couldn't have just started and said, here are 613 commandments. Here it all is.
Right.
Do everything.
I mean, Moses could have come down with the Torah scroll. Why did he come down with these stone tablets? But as you're saying, David, it was a jumping off point to something greater.
I think that's a great metaphor. I like that bridging, that you have to start somewhere to kind of build a bridge to get to where you want to go, but that you have to have something that starts you somewhere. So thank you. I'll definitely look for that book.
That's all the time that we have time for tonight, because we have another session that's going to log on. So did you want to close with any words?
Well, just thank you to all of you who came. We really enjoyed teaching, and Chag Sameach.
Kol hakavod.
To count the Omer tonight, tonight's 49. So if you've made it, congratulations.
Day 49.
So-
Wow, 7 weeks.
Yeah,
It's really passed
yeah,
quickly.
yeah. But thank you everyone so much for coming. Nice to see you all. Hope we get to do this in person next year. That's really the main thing, I think. We're tired of being on Zoom.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night and Chag Sameach, everyone.
Sameach.
Thank you, Ashka.